Observation of certain plants, such as the common sunflower, will reveal one of the types of movements that plants are able to make. In the morning, the flowers are turned toward the sun, somewhat toward the east. A few hours later, responding to the direction of the sunlight, the flowers have turned toward the southeast. As the hours pass, they continue to turn. About midday, they are facing south. And in late afternoon, they face southwest. This response to a directional stimulus is a form of tropism, one kind of plant movement. We'll observe the tropism again under controlled conditions using time-lapse photography. Again, the stimulus is light, this time from a light bulb. Watch the movement of the rhubarb plants as the bulb is moved over a period of several hours. Leaves and stems turn toward the stimulus. This particular tropism is phototropism, response to light. Tropisms are turnings or growth curvatures in relation to the direction of the stimulus. Another response to a directional stimulus is geotropism, the effect of gravity on the direction of plant growth. The trunk of a tree grows upward, away from the center of the earth. The root system grows laterally and downward under the influence of gravity. Geotropism is easily demonstrated with seedlings. 3 grains of corn are planted. The first one is upright, the second on its side, the third upside down. Plant number 1 is growing normally. In number 2, the root is curving downward. Notice that in number 3, root and stem make reverse turns. No matter how the seed is planted, the root goes downward and the stem upward. It is believed that such growth responses are controlled by hormones in the growing cells. Observe what happens when a root strikes an obstacle, such as this stone. Even though deflected, the root continues its downward path. Another tropism is the response of tendrils in certain climbing plants. The tendril, a slender whip-like organ of the stem, is sensitive to contact. When the tendril of the sweet pea is stroked on the lower side, we can see in time-lapse how it curves toward the stroked side. Tendrils help support climbing plants. Here, a support is placed near the sweet pea. When the tendril touches the support, the tendril is stimulated to twine about it. This is thigmotropism, a response to touch or contact. In addition to tropisms, plants exhibit other movements that can easily be observed. On a bright summer day, dandelions are in full flower. The blossoms are fully open. Let's look at these same dandelions when there is little or no sunlight. They are closed. Later, as the light increases, we see them beginning to open again. This is a nastic movement, a response to changes in light intensity and to temperature. Let's observe this nastic movement in the tulip in time-lapse. As the light intensity is varied, we see the closing and opening of the flower. Illustrating nyctinasty, one of several nastic movements. Sleep movements is another name for nyctinasty. This response to diminishing light and temperature protects the pollen from dew and rain. Nyctinasty occurs in leaves as well as flowers. The leaves of the common wood sorrel fold when the light intensity is less, a typical nastic movement. They open again when the light stimulus is stronger. The leaves of the mimosa plant are so sensitive to stimuli that we can observe responses without time-lapse. We'll demonstrate a reaction to a marked change in temperature. Watch the response along the leaf stems. This is an example of thermonasty, another kind of nastic movement. All nastic movements are non-directional external responses to stimuli. We'll try another non-directional external stimulus. The stimulus in this case is shock, and it travels along the leaf stem or petiole. The nastic movement of the leaves is called seismonasty. Let's consider the nature of this movement. At the base of the leaf stem or petiole is a hinge-like enlargement, the pulvinus. When the cells of the pulvinus are turgid, that is, filled with fluid, the leaves stand erect. The reaction to a shock is a loss of fluid from the cells in the lower portion of the pulvinus, and the leaf reflexes downward. One interesting aspect of seismonasty concerns the way reaction to shock can be prevented by use of an anesthetic. The mimosa plant is now in a glass tank into which some ether is poured. The tank is covered, and within a few minutes, the plant is anesthetized. This temporarily renders it insensitive to shock. Thus far, we've been seeing two major kinds of plant movements. Nastic movements, responses to non-directional stimuli, and tropisms, growth curvatures in response to directional stimuli. But plants exhibit a third kind of movement related to their growing, called nutational movement. The waving motion of these bean plants is a nutational movement. Unlike tropisms or nastic movements, nutational movements are responses to internal stimuli in the plants. If we observe these plants from above, we see that the nutational movement is circular. This is termed circumnutation. Circumnutation is easily seen in long, slender climbing plants or twiners. Such climbing plants usually grow on some sort of a support. Let's see how. We'll place a support near the plant. Then, in time-lapse, we'll follow the growth pattern. The plant sweeps round and round in a circumnutational movement. When the vine touches the support, the growth pattern is changed, and the plant twines tightly about the stick as it grows. Here we have two variations in nutational movements. The plant at the left exhibits nutational movements in the leaves and stems. The circumnutation of the other plant results in the stem twining about the support. Let's review the three major types of plant movements we've seen. A tropism is a growth curvature response to a directional stimulus. This particular tropism is thigmotropism, an external touch stimulus, illustrated by the action of a tendril. This tropism, geotropism, is a growth curvature in response to gravity. A nastic movement represents another type of movement. A common nastic movement is illustrated by nyctinasty, the sleep movements of plants, and by thermonasty, the response of plants to an external variation in temperature. The third kind of movement, nutational movement, is any growth curvature in response to internal stimuli. Nutations represent a basic growth pattern of most plants. All plant movements are responses to stimuli, some external, some internal. Responses to these stimuli produce the various kinds of plant movements.